Okay, our last one, video number 5, food guidelines to live by that reflect the eating habits of the people in the blue zones, the people with the highest number of people living past 100 and the lowest rates of chronic disease that are common in other populations like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, stuff like that. And this is just one single rule that kind of summarizes all the other rules we already covered, and that is that 95% of the food and beverages that you consume should be plant-based. And so my best interpretation of that, or a kind of way to implement that, is that means 95% of your grocery cart should be plant-based. So that means maybe spending more time than you're used to in the produce section, filling your cart maybe with things you aren't used to buying in the produce section, so that once you're home and you're packing lunches and you're preparing breakfast and you're planning dinner, you have a lot of plant foods in the fridge or the cupboard to choose from. It would also mean spending less time, as you remember from the other videos, the dairy section, the meat section, the salty snacks aisle, and the sweetened beverage sections of the grocery store, and spending more time in the areas of whole grains, oatmeal, making sure you have a good olive oil, making sure you have lots of fruit, making sure you have lots of beans and seeds and nuts. Maybe that's not something you typically buy at the grocery store, or you once a year buy a can of mixed nuts, but maybe check out the nut and seed selection. Could you get pecans and walnuts and start incorporating those into your oatmeal in the morning? Spend some time on the aisle that has canned beans and dry beans and see if there's something that looks interesting or delicious to you that you could maybe try. The data tells us that most Americans don't do a real great job with eating beans. We occasionally have chili, and then we occasionally, maybe at a restaurant, might have split pea soup. But to regularly, daily include beans, you're going to have to fill your cart with either canned or dry beans so that you can fill your stomach with them. So sometimes when we talk about this in class, students, their brains struggle to think of what I mean by plant food. So it's certainly all the things that we talked about in the original videos of foods to include, and all of those were plant foods. But if it helps, the ones that typically come to mind are fruits and vegetables. When I ask students, give me an example of a plant food, they're like carrots, lettuce, fruits and vegetables. But the other categories of plant foods, foods that originate from plants and not from animals, include grains. So breads, brown rice, the ones we talked about earlier, oatmeal, barley, anything, a whole wheat pasta, anything like that, anything that's made from a grain, whole grain pita breads, whole grain hamburger buns, things like that, tortillas, corn or whole wheat flour tortillas, breakfast cereals that are whole grain, things like that. So fruits and vegetables are plant food categories, but also grains, and then also nuts and seeds, which we've talked about. And that could also include, if that's a way that your family includes nuts easily and in a yummy way, is peanut butter or almond butter, that still counts. So that would be an alternative as well. And then the fifth category would be beans. So fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts and seeds, or beans and legumes. So kidney beans, black beans, navy beans, lentils, things like that. So when you hear people say following a plant-based diet, or the product says it's plant-based, theoretically it's supposed to be mostly made out of ingredients that come from plants instead of animals. So I guess just in comparison, animal foods, certainly everyone thinks about meat. That's the first thing to think of. But animal foods would also be eggs, butter, cream, cheese, yogurt, cottage cheese, butter, anything that originated from an animal or an animal product and then got made into a different product. So ice cream, things like that. So food guideline to live by, try and certainly 95% is a very high goal. So just inch your way there. If you're motivated, see if you can inch your way there. See if on your next trip to the grocery store you can put one new plant food in your cart that you haven't had before. Or just even be aware, just look at your cart and be like, how does this look in terms of the balance of animals and plants? Could I shift that balance a little bit by taking one thing out and replacing it with something else? Okay, I hope that's helpful.